In this video, we continue refactoring our book class to comply with the single responsibility principle. In a previous video, we've refactored the save to file method. And in this one, we're going to have a look at this send notification to make sure that this implementation of how we send the notification, in this case by email, is going to be responsibility of a separate class, because the book isn't really interested in how the email is actually sent. Book can only call the method on a separate instance of the class, which will take care of all this. Okay, so to start with, what we're going to do is create a new directory under the source directory here on the left hand side. Let's call it notification. And inside of this directory, what I'm going to do, I call this method send notification, although I'm sending email here, but I call it specifically this way because we may not only send email notification, we may also send text notification. We can do many things with the notifications. That's why I've generalized this and call it notification. And because of this, what I'm going to do is to create an abstract class which other subclasses will inherit from. Certain things such as, for instance, subject of a message, body of the message, sender, and recipient. These are four common components across many different notification types. That's why we're going to keep them all within this abstract notification class, and any subclasses, like for instance this mail one, which we're going to create in just a moment, will inherit from it all these methods, common methods and properties, which all of them they are going to share between them. Okay, so we're going to start with the notification class, and it's going to be within the app and then notification namespace. And let's click OK. And what I want to do here, first of all, is make sure that this class is an abstract class. So abstract class notification. And we're going to start with a few properties. I'm going to make them all protected, so they're available to the child classes, but not to the outside world. So subject is going to be the first one. And let's just add quickly the dog block is going to be of a string type. Then we're going for the protected body of the message, string, and then protected sender. And sender might be either a string or an array, because when we're going to be dealing with email, we may have something like, for instance, email name. And this is the format that we might be sending, obviously, arguments through by associating the value like this with the sender. And also with the next property called recipient, so protected recipient, which may also have the same format, so var string and array. Okay, I'm going to create a few new lines here. Okay, so we've got our properties. The first method is going to be a getter and setter, same way as I did with the file system. It's going to be called subject, so public function subject. It will take argument called subject as well, by default null. And if this argument is null, then we know that we want to get the value associated with the subject property, so return this subject. Otherwise, I'm also going to return this subject equals subject. And let's add dog blocks here. And it's going to be either null or a string. And get set subject. Now, as I've mentioned in the previous video, most of the setters don't return anything. They simply return void. But what I did with my getters and setters, basically, I still return the value which we're passing through as an argument, but I'm also associating it with the property at the same time. So basically, regardless of which condition, whether this condition returns true or false, we're still going to return the value. Okay, so that's our subject. Now for the body, it's going to be exactly the same. So public function body, and we pass body this time equals null, and if is null body, then return it, this body property, there we go. Otherwise, we're going to return and associate it with the body property. And the same thing, let's add doc blocks here. Null or string, and then get set body. Okay, so the next method is going to be a sender, public function sender, and again exactly same thing. Null by default if is null sender, then this sender equals sender, otherwise return. Obviously this is wrong, that's not what we want. Return this sender here, and here we are associating obviously this way. Okay, and doc blocks sender null. It might be string, but it might also be array. And we go for get set sender. Yeah, there we go. And I'm going to duplicate all this, because as much as I like typing, typing the same thing over and over again isn't much fun really. So recipient, and this is going to be changed to recipient. There we go. And this is the method is called recipient as well. And this property is also recipient. Okay, so we've got all these getters and setters. We could probably create a single method and then use the magic call methods to delegate it based on the name of the method that we're trying to trigger. But let's just keep it this way. This way we know that obviously my IDE is going to recognize these methods. Otherwise, if we use this magic call method, then obviously it wouldn't know that this method exists. So I'll tend to keep it this way. Okay, now the last thing that we need is to make sure, is to provide a contract, is to make sure that whatever class is going to extend this notification class is going to have a method called send, which will allow to basically send this message that we actually want to dispatch. Okay, so abstract public function send. It's only a contract, so we don't provide the implementation, but we will add the doc block here. It's going to return integer, so all of them will have to return the integer, and then we're going to say send notification. Actually integer, and let's put boolean as well, because some of them might just return boolean. And I think that's everything for our notification, abstract notification class. It's basically containing all of our properties and then setters and getters for these properties. So that's our notification class. Now, the implementation of how we actually send this email in this case is going to be within the specific class which deals with email distribution, and it's going to be called mail. Okay, so, and this one will extend notification. And obviously highlight automatically comes into play here because we need to implement the method called send, which is an abstract method on this notification class. So send method, before we actually do the send method, what I'm going to do is start right at the top, and we're going to create a private property called transport. And this transport will be an instance of the Swift SMTP transport. Let's import it right at the top here. Then we're going to have a constructor, public function constructor. We don't pass any arguments, but we will trigger the method called set transport. Let's add this method right after the constructor. And it's going to be private function set transport. Now let's add doc blocks to the constructor as well. It's just a mail constructor. And then set transport methods, we're going to start with this transport equals Swift SMTP transport, and then new instance, and we're going to, on 2 new lines, I'm just going to put it like this, .env package, which I'm using here, get, and I want to get the variable called mail underscore host, and then comma, and then we're going to use the port. So host and port are going straight into the new instance method, and then continuing this, we could chain it, but I just prefer here use it on a separate line. So this transport set username, which is going to come again from the environment variable .env get, and we go for mail username. And let's duplicate this line. The next one is going to be set password. There we go. And it's mail password. And that's all within our set transport. So this is preparing the transport for our mail. Set transport. And it returns void. Okay, so after set transport, the next thing we need is our message. And we're going to create private function message. And here we're going to return Swift underscore message. And this message will also create new instance to start with. And first thing we're going to do, use the subject. So this subject to pass through to this new instance. And let's import this class as well, just to go top here. I'm importing, obviously I've got this message and transport and .env as well, because we're using this here. And then, actually, we're not semicolon, we're going to chain it here. Is going to be set from this sender property on our notification class. Then next one is going to be set to, which is going to be this recipient, and the last thing is going to be set body, which is going to be this body. So this is our message, which is going to be returned from within this method. Let's add doc blocks again. It returns, rather than main part, let's call it Swift message. And here we're going to add get message for the summary. And now it's time to implement our send method, which is going to be really simple, because all we have to do now is create new mailer instance. So Swift mailer, there we go, new instance, and we pass transport as argument, and then return mailer send and this message. And that's all we need to do. So that's our mail class now completed. Now, how do we use this mail class within our book class? Let's remove what we have within the send notification, because that's no longer needed here. What we're going to do, however, is apart from the sender and recipient, the first argument I'm going to pass, if you want to obviously have it last, it's entirely up to you, whatever order you want these arguments to have here. I'm going to inject the instance of this mail, but rather than having a concrete implementation of the mail, I'm going to actually indicate that I want anything that's extending this notification. So what I'm going to do is put notification and then notification. So this is my first argument now to this method. I add it to the doc blocks as well. And on this notification, what I'm going to do is notification subject. I'm going to set to this notification subject. We have this method here. If we scroll down, you can see that method is available. You can obviously change it to whatever you want. Then we're going to do notification body is going to be this notification body, the method right underneath. Then we're going to go for notification sender, there we go, which is the argument we're getting to this method. And then notification recipient is going to be recipient. And now the last thing we need to do is to send the message. So return notification send. And that's all we have. We don't have any implementation guts here. As you can see, we get the instance of the notification class. We set subject body send the recipient, and we call send. That's all that book class is concerned about, that we need to send it. But how are we going to send it? None of my business, really. So that's how you extract all this logic that was here within the send notification class to a separate class. So now this logic is a concern of this mail class. It's no longer a concern of the book class. So single responsibility means now a book class now is not responsible for saving file, is not responsible for sending email or any other notification type. It's only responsible for the things that are book related, things like title, content. We can change this at any time, but things like implementations of how the file is saved or email sent. That's none of our business. Okay, so I think it's a good time to actually test what we've just done. So first thing we need to do, our .env file, if you haven't copied the .example, because that's what you should do, the exercise files will come with .env.example. This is what you've got there. Copy this file, remove .example, and from within the .env, simply update this mail host port username and password to your own SMTP credentials. I'm going to be using the Mailtrap. I'll update this .env behind the scenes because I don't want anyone to know my credentials, obviously. And we're going to start, we're going to run the test basically in the browser to see whether this notification is actually going to be sent. But before we do this, let's open index.php. We already saved into files. So for now, I'm going to comment this line. And this time we are going to call method send notification. And we know this send notification takes 3 arguments. First one is instance of the notification. And this mail class, by extending notification, is also becoming an instance of this notification. So if I just go back to the index, so we can use new mail, and we want this app notification mail. And it doesn't take any arguments. Let's import this class straight away. So we have this use statement here, use app notification mail. That's the first argument. So our notification instance is now added to the list of arguments. Then we want to get the sender, and the sender is going to be info ssdtutorials.com. And then, as I said earlier, you can use the array to specify sender and recipient. So email is the key, value is going to be the name, SSD tutorials. This is where we're receiving from. And the last argument is going to be, and again, it's going to be an array, SSD tutorials at gmail.com. And let's leave it without. Let's leave it just as a string this way, because it may be a string as well, as we may remember. Okay, so that should now send a notification. In the meantime, I've updated my .env file. I'm not going to open it now because it contains the credentials that I use for sending with Mailtrap. You obviously should update it as well before you run this test. So save it, open our browser, and if we refresh the page, and there we go, we've got fatal error, and I have a feeling I've mistyped something. So let's get back to our editor. And if we go back to our book, it wasn't book, sorry, in mail. Let's check the set transport here, mail, host, mail. Of course, it's a mail port, not post. Mail port, mail username and password. That should be fine. Let's go back, refresh the page now. Okay, everything seems to be working fine because we don't get any exceptions or errors. So let's check our Mailtrap now. And here's the message. As you can see, it arrived as we would expect. It's just a plain text, but it contains the message plus the link to a file. So if we try and open this file, obviously in the browser, I just copy and paste it, and there we go. This is where the file is stored. So everything seems to be working just fine. So if we go back to the editor, now you can see how we've extracted all this responsibility that was within this book class to a separate classes, and now book class only deals with the things that are actually related to the books. It still calls the method send notification and save to file, but rather than having the implementations, it only basically uses the methods on the separate instances of the classes and ask them to do it. In other words, you may say, hey buddy, I'm a book. I don't really know how to save file. Can you save it for me? And then the same for the notification. Basically it says, hey, notification class, can you send this message for me? I would like to send the content of myself to this recipient from this sender. In other words, if it's not your responsibility to perform a certain task, ask the class whose responsibility it is to do it for you.